Hello, today I'm going to just walk you through the resource management add-in for Excel and just some of the features of it. It's not going to be 100% exhaustive, but it should give you a good idea of the functional capability of the add-in. Um, I will first of all start with the database. Um, so resource management saves its data to a small local database that's portable with the application. Um, so the database, you can have multiple databases defined. So if your resources can be split down into different types and you want to hold them into a different repository or different database for each one, you can do that. Um, you can search for an existing database using select database path. You can add a new database. Um, it will come up. It will give you a default new database. I'm just going to save that just as an example, just so that you can see that the way the database is provisioned in the first place, it has a default mode um, for the resources that are entered into it. What do I mean by that? By default, you can either specify that all resources are available unless there are records which specify they're unavailable, or you can specify that they're by default unavailable unless you have a record that says they are available. Most people will select available by default, i.e. you will specify unavailability that they're on holiday between this date and this date, or unavailable on this day of the week, or whatever it happens to be. So I'll just click on available just to show that it will create the database. Um, the database, once it has been created, you'll notice that the demo one is highlighted in red. What that implies is it's the active database. You can only have one active one associated um, uh, to be using at a point in time, and this one happens to be on the demo one. I can easily select the new one and select to make it active. That will just change to make that one the active one. Um, and therefore, if you come out of here very quickly and go into look at any of the data, you'll find it's completely blank. So there's no records in here because it was a new database we just created. I'm just going to switch back to the demo one as that is what has some data in it, and will make the demo look a bit more easier to see things. I'll make my way along the settings ones first. There is what's called closures. So that allows you to specify overall closures for the organization that these resources or entity that these resources are working for. Um, so I seem to have created two records there. I'll delete one of those. Um, so you can specify it could be because of say Easter default. You may have a shutdown period effectively for the organization, or there could be some other reasons. Um, you could also be that you only work on certain months or certain periods of time effectively. So you can create new entries, you can delete as I showed you, or you can update an existing one if you want to um, uh, just amend the date or the name effectively of that closure effectively. Um, so that's very briefly closures. Another two important aspects are in the settings are what we call selection lists and resource name values. Selection lists are generic reusable lists uh, of things. They could be anything you want them to be. Um, so in this list here, we've got color, and it has a list of colors, and you can add or remove colors. So let's just add one there, black or whatever. So that will come up. You'll see that later, I think, in the demo. Um, this happens to be delivery. I couldn't come up with original names, so just run 1, 2, 3. So say you're delivering stuff. Gender, male or female. So you can see the whole rationale here is you can have many lists. I will note that 2 of these lists, gender and salutation, are used by the system. You can change the name of the list, and that will appear um, on the actual UI. And obviously, you can add entries to the list as well. I don't know, original, so that they will also appear. So salutation. So you may choose not to call this salutation, but let's just say sal. You can update that. So now we've got sal in there. So that gives you ability to create new lists or edit existing lists as well. Um, to use that list, you need to associate it with resource management. So here, what you'll see in this screen is the ability to associate a list, give it a name. So here we had this, remember we had the, out of all that list we had here, we had the delivery list. We've got it Bell, and that's what's going to be displayed. And you can also select the type of list it is, type of resource name value, and there are 3 types. A multi-select list, and you'll come to see what that is, but it effectively means you can select multiple values. A single select, so a classic, drop down, select a value effectively, or just free format text. So free format text is where we don't have a list item as an employee ID, and it's just text. So that means that you can just free format into whatever you want. So here you can see there are 4 different with 3 different types of lists that or value types we created here. A single selection for the color that you prefer, a textual field for the employee, and a delivery for the delivery run, and also the kitchen sort of test. So a note, here you can change the name, and that's what's going to appear on the screen. So let me just do that so you can see that. And maybe we're going to change this to say what it called delivery run, and we'll update that. So you'll see that those will appear on the screen. So now you can just come out of this. So that means you can set up a few extra fields and parameters that will appear against the resource. So probably that's a good segue to actually go to the resource management. So the resource management screen has a list of resources at the highest level, and then you can go in and edit that resource, or you can create a new resource effectively. But this list gives you a way of giving you a summary of their availability at a high level. And again, you can drill into the availability for that resource as well. Up the top here is the ability to do a little bit of filtering as well. So if you've got big long lists, you can filter down. So say I only want names which begin with A, or have A in it, so I should say, because it doesn't do start with, it's just anything that's got a match in there. But But you could also filter on the full name. So say I just want B's in there. Um, so Simon has preferred name Si, but you can see had Brown for the surname, so it appeared in the list effectively. Not only that, if I clear that, you can also, there's another toggle button here to show active or inactive. Um, what that shows are people who have an end date, and we'll come on to that when we look at the detail screens, and they've got an end date in the past, so they're no longer active in the organization effectively. So that's useful, obviously, that you don't want to show necessarily a big long list of people who've left or no longer work for you at the moment. The reason why they're still in the system, they're not deleted, is because they may be transient, they may go away for a period of time and come back, and you don't want to delete their record and history effectively. I'm just going to go into Alex as an example of a resource and the details that are there. We don't capture a lot of details in a structure. We've got a few fields. As I mentioned earlier, some of these lists are what we call system lists, which means that they appear in the form as more of a structured way. And this was the one where we added, we changed the salutation to sal, and we added sir to the list as well. So we capture some basic information. Start and end date, that goes as important, and the end date is important because that maximum is inactive, and a couple of other bits of information effectively. The key part here is that, as I previously said, we can add both single value selections and multi-values, and they will appear here. And this list will just get longer effectively. And as I said, purely textile fields, that allows you to add enter a value, or in the case of the favorite color, that was the drop down list where I think we added black to it, so you can change that. We also said we can associate multi-lists, and many of those. So this is which multi-list. We've got 2 associated, but you could have many more. And as you select the multi-list, it brings up what those pre-selections. So multi-list is basically, rather than just being able to select black here, you can actually use the checkbox to select multiple values. So the skills here is, you can change those around and select what their skills happen to be. Important thing in multi-select, because we can switch the list, you have to make sure you press the update button here. That doesn't actually save it. What it does is it actually stores it, that actually I've made this update, I want to store this when I hit the save, else it won't save it when you hit the save button. So effectively hitting that update means changing dessert. When I hit save now, it will save that change from, I think it was helper to cook, dessert cook. And so if I press save now and go back in, we should see that now shows dessert cook effectively in there. So that's just bear that in mind with the multi-select. You have to either save, or you can, the cross doesn't delete per se. What it does is it resets everything back effectively and removes those changes, ready for when you save effectively. You can delete the record, but in a lot of cases you may just want to end date that record rather than deleting it, because you're going to lose all the data associated with that person. So there's not a lot of data here associated with the person, but I guess the key part here will be certain things to do with their availability and unavailability. We'll go on to that next. I should point out that you can add a new record, and that just brings up a blank record, prompts you to enter a certain amount of detail. If you try to save now, it will tell you that you're missing certain fields, and you need to have a basic record to be able to save it. But that allows you to create a new record. I won't go through that. For each record you select at the top here, you'll see that this list down here, this is a summary of their availability records. So one record per availability record is shown here. And obviously this can run into a long list. Um, but the availability records can be both for availability and unavailability. By default, if the database is set to available, you would only normally set unavailable records for individuals. But there may be occasions where you want to set availability records as well for certain items. Let me just double click to go into one. Again, you can double click or you can do edit to go in. So this is going to bring up that record. The availability record allows you to select available and unavailable. But as I said, if the actual database is already set to available, then you would probably only be creating unavailable records. There are three different, along the top here is you can also specify time parameters for these patterns. So what that means is the pattern applies on whatever the basis of the pattern is, but only between these dates. Or you can select all day. Now, most of the time it's going to be all day, but you may say, because every Monday morning, I think this is Alex, has an appointment with his clinician that is unavailable between, say, 9 and 10. So you could have a record of that nature. Let me just show you the patterns though, because those are the key ones which drive everything. There are three different main types of patterns. There's a date range pattern. So that's very simple. Between one date and another date, this person is not available. This one happens to be one day only, from the 1st to the 1st 26 to the 1st to the 1st 26. You'll notice down the bottom here, there's this thing called range pattern. For a date range, it's not applicable, nor is it set to no end date. The reason why is because the actual date range specifies the end date, so no reason to use it. But this will come to the fore when we start to click into the next types of records that you can have. So the second pattern is is what we call weekly pattern. So a weekly pattern, and it goes back to what I was just saying before. On a Monday of every, this says week, but every second week, and you could then get more granular between 9 a.m. and let's just say 10 a.m. They're unavailable, and this is where the range of patterns comes in. You can specify between two dates from here and whatever. You can specify no end date, or so end dates, so that's a from and a to. You can specify that this only occurs 10 times or 12 times, and then it will end after that. Or you can say no date. This is ad infinitum, every Monday of every second week, between 9 and 10, Alex is not available. So if I just save that, then you've got that update there. You can see that record's been updated to show a summary of that. So that just gives you an example of some of those records and how resource management allows you to enter some details and some extra values that you want to enter, and also availability of that resource. So those is because resource management, it's principally around availability of resources. That's all fine and good, but what you really want to do is be able to use that data. Now, to use that data, we don't predefine reports. We make the data available in two different formats for you to be able to use and build effectively your own reports views or whatever you want to do effectively. Um, to support those two mechanisms, and I'll come on to those two mechanisms and talk through, they both are predicated on having a rule, and a rule is what's applied to a simplified view of the data um, that allows you to use that data um, within an applied list or an applied formula. So let me just take you through some examples of rules. And I'll take you through an example of a list rule. So this box up here, so up here you can select existing rules or it's new. If it's new, you enter a new name and you create it. This is existing, but it still brings it up for you to be able to edit it. Up here you have all the available structures and data types that you can use within those rules. This is not how the data is held, but it's how it's displayed for for the end user to be able to use effectively. This list rule is a very simple rule. It uses a list that we saw some of our predefined lists earlier. We're using the kitchen role, and all it's going to do is display the role, which is the value in that kitchen role, um, in a list. Because here you can select it could be a single value, but then you needed to filter it. In this case, it's a list of values that you're going to display. It's a very simple rule, one that's a little bit more complex. And I should say, within values, you can move them up and down, move to the beginning. You can move them across to the filters, or you can remove the field altogether, in which case it takes it back to, it removes it from the list. But as soon as you click in here, it will default into values. But you can also use drag and drop, and that will drop it in. You could drag it back and to get rid of it, and it will clear it. You could drag it into filters as well, just if that was the intent in that. But I won't dwell on that one. What I will do is go to a slightly more complex rule. So resource availability is a rule which is trying to show a list of resources who are available between certain dates and have a certain skill. So what this has dragged in is you'll see you've got preferred name here, but it's also dragged in some other fields. So we've got availability date, the availability field, and the kitchen skill, as it was called, I think at the time. I think I've renamed it. So kitchen skill up here effectively. What the filter allows you to do, and you see it here, is allow you to filter so they only get the list of resources where I'm going to show the preferred name, where the skill in this case is equal to a parameter, and I'll come on to parameters. Parameters are at execution time passed to this rule. And you'll see here that the operator is equals, but if I was to say it to greater, then you'll see that change to greater. We'll change it back because it should be equals. But so where you're seeing these drop downs are your ability to add brackets or parentheses, allow you to operate it. Obviously, it's the first entry, you don't need an and. The type of binding, so is this a parameter or is this is this a parameter or is this a rule-based entry? I'm seeing this is dropping off your screen, so I'm going to lift this up a bit. So therefore you can select which one it will be. So this is parameter, whereas if I go to the availability, it said it was a rule-based, and because it's availability, it is associated with certain values. Noticing it's still not shown on your screen, so therefore I'm going to move this up a bit more. Um, and so these are fixed available values that you can have for availability. It could be either available, unavailable. And we also have the notion of partially available. What does partially available means? It means if they were only available, if your parameters were between these dates and even for one day, and they were only out for an hour, they would be partially but available for the rest of that time, then they'd be partially available. Okay, we also have these dates, the to and from dates. They're also slightly special fields. Um, certain date fields have what we call time slicing. So what that means is when I'm looking at a date range, how am I looking at it from the availability perspective in this case? Is it, am I looking at it from an hourly perspective, a daily, a weekly, a monthly, or the whole range? This isn't so pertinent when you're looking in this case, which is a list, because you really want to say, well, are they available, unavailable for this period of time effectively. But if your rule was more based because you want to get a range out, you may actually want to have a slicing where you actually look at the person's availability on an hourly basis or a weekly basis or a monthly basis rather than the whole date range. So your date range may span 6 months or something of that nature, and you also want to know, well, which weeks are these people available or unavailable, or what can go down to down hourly. So it gets quite, a little bit more sophisticated with what you can do around that. Okay, so all that's well and good. So let's look at one application of rules. It is only a brief overview of the rules and how they're defined. So apologies that you probably left quite a few questions, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to show you an example of where this has been used. So this is an example roster. So how does the roster work? The roster has uses some natural Excel features. So I defined in here a, a date calculation. So that's just a name value effectively. So if I go down here, it's this formula here, which is a big long formula. What that does is that's going to say if you change the date at the top here, so February, it's just going to change these dates here. And you can just change the year as well. That gives you a template for like a roster. There's no smarts in that in terms of, or just a bit of smarts from, but natural Excel type thing. Where we're starting to use these rules and the lists, what you'll see here when I click on this cell is I get a pop-up drop down. This is not a native Excel pop down. This is part of the application. What that allows you to do, and this is an example where I've made this multi-select, is you can select not sure why you selected multi-selects in here. There should be single selects. You can select the role you want here. What what's what happens then for the resource? Again, it's using that second rule. So that was the first rule, remember, that we came up with. Uses the second rule. Whoops, I've got a multi-select again. Okay, we go to the single select one. So I was playing with examples of you can use multi-select or single select. In a single select, you see a drop-down list. So what this is doing is actually doing a couple of lookups because we specified the parameters. So if I look at the what we call the apply tab has defined how and where we get the data. So I'll just walk through how we can do that here. So if you look at what the apply has done and what you can do is specify where where is the data in association to the other data. Obviously already done something there in terms of applying it. But if I was to apply, this is a single select item. It wants to look a single cell offset to the left to pick up the actual role. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat here. I'm just going to go and select rep. So we have something there. I'm going to let's go back and actually just do this as new, right? So I'm going to say, let's do this as a test. I'm going to select the role resource availability. And what you'll see down here is a load of things it's wanting to define. Okay, I need to find where the kitchen role is. It says no binding defined. So if I go down to kitchen skills, it's going to tell me the selecting binding type. And again, that's gone off the screen. Apologies. So the binding type can be a literal, so you can enter a value. You can specify an absolute range or cell if it's a single cell or the position of it. You can select a relative cell, or you can select what's called a named range in Excel to use. So where you've given a name to a cell that's specific. In this example, I'm just going to say I'm going to select a relative, and once I've selected that, when I go to the parameter binding, what it's going to say is, well, okay, you want it relative at what point? So I'm going to select the same cell as what we call the anchor. From this is the point at which it's going to measure it. And then I'm going to go, okay, now it's going to ask me, well, where is the relative cell? And I'm just going to select the one next to it. So what you'll see here is once I've done that, is actually put in a relative offset, which is effectively the same row and minus one column to pick up the skill. Availability was a fixed rule, so it's fixed to availability, but we also need to pick up the date. So I'm just going to cheat here. I'm going to say, okay, I need to specify the date. I'm just going to use a value type of a absolute position. I'm going to go and select the parameter, the position of that. I'm just going to use the second or whatever. Because I want to know availability for a specific date from the two, I'm going to make the same day. So I'm going to go back, select again, I want an absolute, and I'm going to say I want it to be from the same location. Okay, and now I go, oh, I haven't selected the rule type. So what do I want it? Do I want it to be single or multi-select? I want it to be single. Multi was where you saw that you could have a checkbox. And then when I apply it, you've got to click off and click back on. But now it's showing me a list of people available on that date who's got that skill. Now, I can compare that because if I look at prep and I look at this and November the 2nd, you'll have the same list of people in it. But that briefly showed you one way of using those rules to provide drop-down lists. And as indicated, I think by here, you can actually, that's a bad one to pick probably, let's say Alex. So you could have multiple people selected. And what that does is it will update the cell with both. So you can also select multiple people within a cell and do it that way as well, if you wanted to have more than one value within the cell selected. So that's one use of rules. I'm going to just flip very quickly to the other use. And here are some ones which are sort of pre-done before, but I'll just go back through. Um, so you can still, there's I expose a couple of functions. This one happens to be a view function. So what is called a view is basically pretty much a view of the raw data. Um, there are effectively three types of uh, sorry, there's a number of different types of views. The views will be listed along here, so you can see the names here. So it does come up with those. It also allows you to select whether you want to actually show a header or not. So if I put this as false, it will say no. So the way spills work or don't work um, are are like that. um, so that one didn't work. I need to work out why. I think it might be because I've changed some data in here and haven't updated this view. There is a resources view. So again, you can see that's still working. Um, I'll need to go back. Is it called lists or is that the wrong name? It should be the right name. Um, so yeah, so there's a couple of lists that you can do. I know why it failed, it's overlapping. Um, and now the list will work. So that's me, sorry, not thinking. So a spill is quite useful because you can actually reference it like and use it as if the data appears in that cell, but the formula actually only sits in that first cell on the left-hand side. So there are two different types of formulas. One's called a resource manager view values, and this one here where I was, this one here is a rules value, and this is using a rule available hourly. Um, and what it's got here is it's telling me the parameters it requires are the start and the end date. And it says, give me the available resources on an hourly basis. So actually, if I actually go back to the left and start on the start, you can see that these are the values that it's dragging out. And that's based upon the the rule available hourly. And I've decided that yeah, it's got preferred name Jen and Ketchen because the availability is split by hour and date. It will actually break it down by hour and date. Sorry, date and hour, I should say. So two different types of formulas that you can use. One's a sort of basic view one, which drags out all the data, including the internal unique index to that value, which allows you to do more things within Excel. This one is using a rule, which just drags out the data in a simpler format. Using a rule, though, so it allows you to filter. I'm going to stop there. I'm sure that there's more to cover, but hopefully that's given you a very brief introduction to resource management.